Nick Masee was born in the Netherlands in 1939 and emigrated to Canada in 1957. 2 years later, he began working as a clerk for the Bank of Montreal. He was employed by them for the next 35 years, steadily moving up to positions with more and more responsibility. His various positions had him working in Halifax, Montreal, and Vancouver over the years. He was an active member of the Dutch-Canadian community and belonged to, and held leadership positions in, professional associations for this community. Nick married and had 2 children, but that marriage ended in divorce. In 1984, he met the woman who would become his second wife, Lisa. Lisa had also been married before, and was also an immigrant, having been born in China. In Vancouver, she was working as a hairstylist. The couple met at a hair salon on Cambie Street, where Lisa would cut Nick's hair. Nick did well in his banking career, and eventually became the manager of the elite private banking center at the Bank of Montreal. At the beginning of 1994, he retired from his position at the bank, but continued to work. He worked as a stock promoter and received a directorship at Turbodyne Technologies, a publicly traded company that was developing technology to reduce emissions from diesel engines. On August 10, 1994, Nick and Lisa were invited to join some of their friends at the Symphony of Fire fireworks display over Vancouver's English Bay. They had to turn down the invitation because they had a business dinner that evening. Nick was reportedly meeting with a businessman from California who had $10 million he was considering investing in Turbodyne Technologies. Nick made a reservation for 4 at his favorite restaurant, Trader Vic's, in the Cole Harbour neighborhood of downtown Vancouver, for 8:30 that night for the dinner. No one showed up to the restaurant for the reservation, and no one called to cancel it. The staff at the restaurant was surprised by this. They were familiar with Nick because he was a regular customer, and it was out of the ordinary for him to fail to show up for a reservation without at least calling to cancel it. The restaurant employee who took the reservation knew Nick and was able to confirm that it was in fact Nick who called to make it. 2 witnesses would later come forward, placing Nick and Lisa in the area of the restaurant around the time they should have been there for their meeting. Both of these witnesses knew the couple personally and claimed to have seen them on the night of the 10th at the Garden Lounge at the Westin Bayshore, which was next door to Trader Vic's. The couple was allegedly there from 6:30 to 10:30 p.m. According to the witnesses, Nick was drinking a bottle of wine and was dressed in a casual jogging suit. Lisa appeared to have come there straight from work, still dressed in the clothes she wore at her job. Neither witness believed that Nick and Lisa were dressed as though they were on their way to an important business appointment. The following morning, August 11th, Lisa made 2 phone calls from her husband's cell phone. She called the salon where she worked and left a message with a coworker that she had been called away for a few days for a court case. She then called Nick's business partner to say that he would be gone for a few days. Cell phone records would later show that the calls had been routed through a repeater on Bowen Island. This means that the calls could have been made from or near the couple's home in North Vancouver, or from a fairly large area along the coast. No one saw or heard from Nick or Lisa after these phone calls. After a few days, Lisa's sister became concerned and went over to the couple's home. When she arrived, she found the front door unlocked and the security system disarmed. There were 2 plastic zip ties on the floor by the front door of the home. The couple's 17-year-old Persian cat, Spider, was alone in the home with no food. According to Nick's children, he adored Spider and would never have left him uncared for. The couple's car was in the driveway, and their passports had been left behind. Their bank accounts were left untouched. While some have speculated that Nick and Lisa had entered some sort of witness protection program, the 2 main theories about their disappearance are that they met with foul play or that they staged their own disappearances. There have been numerous theories about what circumstances could have led to either scenario. Most of these theories could provide potential motives for someone to harm the couple, but could also be reasons why the couple would be fearful enough of being harmed to abandon everything and leave Vancouver. Nick's job with the Bank of Montreal had given him connections in some of the most affluent social circles in Canada, But his business relationships also gave him ties to several financial scandals. One of his associates, Fred Hoffman, conned members of Vancouver's Dutch community out of millions of dollars with a Ponzi scheme. He, along with more than $10 million, vanished in April of 1991. Almost a third of that amount had been taken from a retired anesthesiologist from Seattle, who had been introduced to Hoffman by Nick Masee. Nick had also been a personal banker for Harry Mall. One of Mall's many endeavors had been creating the Pine Ridge Capital Group, which collapsed in 1992. A scandal arose during this collapse when millions of dollars worth of investors' funds went missing. Mall eventually moved to the Cayman Islands. One of Nick's business relationships also had him involved in an active legal case in 1994. Nick and Lisa went missing just before Nick was due to testify against a businessman who had been one of his former clients and was on trial for allegedly stealing $100,000. However, Nick was only an incidental witness, according to Crown prosecutors. His disappearance was still successfully used by the defense lawyers in the case to get a 7-month-long delay in the trial. Nick Masee did appear to be under an unusual amount of stress for most of 1994, according to those close to him. He had become unusually secretive and tense, and appeared to be concerned for his safety. This stress was very apparent to others at a funeral he had attended just before his disappearance. He was reportedly unusually distraught, and said he wanted to get out of town for a while. After Nick and Lisa went missing, authorities also learned that they had made a secret trip to the Cayman Islands in April of 1994. They had not told any of their friends or family members about the trip. During their time there, the couple set up a bank account and had their wills drawn up. Nick's son, who was also named Nick, hired a private investigator named Ozzie Caban to look into his father and stepmother's disappearance. The two men had a falling out after Caban came to the conclusion that Nick Sr. and Lisa had staged their disappearance. He based this belief off of statements from witnesses he would not identify, and a claim that he was able to use his connections to learn that Nick and Lisa's account in the Cayman Islands had more than $100,000 in it. Other reports indicate that the account held $50,000 worth of stocks. Authorities say that they have not found any evidence that Nick and Lisa fled their home to start a new life somewhere else. While Nick's position in the exclusive private banking center of the Bank of Montreal had given him connections to politicians, wealthy businessmen, and multimillionaires, it should be noted that Nick himself was not as wealthy as his clients. His highest annual salary from the bank was reportedly $85,000. While this is certainly not a small salary, and is equivalent to more than $130,000 today, Nick's assets were nowhere near those of the clients whose money he helped manage. Nick and Lisa were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt between their mortgage, credit card debt, and business expenses. Financial stress is of course a potential motive for Nick and Lisa to have wanted to run away voluntarily, and Nick's position in the financial community may give the impression that he could afford to do so. However, while some of Nick's clients could have certainly financed such an action, it is unclear how Nick and Lisa would have been able to do so. Financial considerations aside, Nick Masee Jr. believes that his father was too straight-laced and conservative to take the sort of risks involved with faking his disappearance and starting a new life. In 2001, he, his sister Tanya, and Lisa's sister Loretta petitioned the courts in British Columbia to declare the missing couple legally dead. Authorities also believe that Nick and Lisa were victims of some sort of crime, even though the exact nature of that crime remains unknown. On July 30th, 2019, shortly before the 25th anniversary of the couple's disappearance, the North Vancouver detachment of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police held a press conference with Nick's children, Nick and Tanya, to appeal to the public for information. Perhaps the time that has gone by would allow somebody to come forward now that otherwise might have remained silent in the past, Nick Masee Jr. said at the press conference. Nick and Tanya also announced that they were doubling the amount of the reward they are offering for information in the case from $25,000 to $50,000. Despite the amount of time that has passed since they have seen their father and stepmother, and the fact that they believe them to be deceased, Nick and Tanya still hope to find answers about what became of Nick Sr. and Lisa. Everybody loses their parents at one time in their life, but then you have a funeral, and we don't have that, and that part has been extremely difficult, Tanya said at the press conference. I think it will be the greatest gift we could ever receive. Closure.